All
Good
right.
afternoon.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome to August Sustainable in the City. It's hard to believe. Christina, how is it August? I don't understand.
I don't. Time keeps on slipping. Into the future. Don't tell anybody that I just said that. Now YouTube is going to take off our video. A song.
You said something copyrighted.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Please take a minute to get settled, get ready to learn a lot about some very interesting content related to rivers and farming. What could be better to talk about?
I'm very excited about this episode. I am actually surrounded right now by farms and a little creek. I'm in upstate New York. I'm on vacation, but I'm also working because y'all know I can't get enough of sustainable in the city. Just can't get enough.
Cannot get enough, can't escape it. What's the difference, right?
So I'm ready. I want to see if these farms that are right next to this little creek, next to this house that we're staying in, if they're being river friendly, and I'll go talk to them if not.
You'll take your learnings from this afternoon and you'll go and quiz your farmers. Love it. Well, I'm still in Nashville, surrounded by the Cumberland River and its many creeks and streams and all of that. So I too am surrounded by rivers and farms, as we will learn about.
Rivers and farms. Fantastic. As always, wonderful to talk with you, Allie, in the beginning. And I think we're ready to get started.
Yes. Well, hopefully we have I didn't even see how many people we have joining us, but hopefully we have a critical mass. But again, welcome to the show. Welcome to Sustainable in the City. Today's episode, we are excited to have two local farmers right here in Nashville, Reggie Marshall of Reggie's Veggies and Alex Bice of Cooper Creek Farm, along with the Working Lands Program Manager at Cumberland River Compact, Caroline Hutchins. We will discuss the important relationship between farms and watersheds and what it means to be a river-friendly farm in Nashville. And as a reminder, as always, Sustainable in the City is a partnership between Zero Waste Nashville, my organization, and Urban Green Lab, Christina and Chris's organization. My name is Allie Omens, and I am the Zero Waste Program Coordinator for Metro Nashville Waste Services, and I'm here with both Christina and Carissa from Urban Green Lab. If you want to take a moment to introduce yourselves.
Yes, for sure. Carissa, why don't you start us off?
So I'm Carissa Hampton. I am the Sustainable Households Manager here at Urban Green Lab, and I am just trying to incorporate some of those sustainable practices in the homes, and to see how we can really build sustainable green habits.
Perfect. And so Carissa will be taking over my position here as co-host with our darling Allie, but we'll be doing a slow roll of that change for folks. So I'll be here for a little while longer, and I'm not going anywhere at Urban Green Lab. So I am the Director of Education here at Urban Green Lab, and really just super excited as always to have you all joining us for Sustainable in the City. And then just a reminder of how to use the chat and the Q&A feature. So for the chat, we like for you all to chat with each other, to share your own resources, to let us know how the episode is feeling for you. But then if you have any questions for our guests, then we would ask you to put that in the Q&A feature. So that is the question and answer feature right over there when you click on more, and it says either chat or Q&A. The Q&A is where we're going to actually pull your questions from. So please be sure that is where you put your questions. If they're in the chat, we cannot guarantee that they will be asked. So if you want to hear your question answered live, please put that in the Q&A, and Carissa will grab that at the end of the episode. And then just to get us started, to make sure that everyone feels comfortable with the chat, please make sure it is set to everyone so that everyone can see your great, your musings as we go on through the episode. And we would love to see, what is your favorite farm fresh produce? What is your favorite farm fresh produce? I love fresh beans. Beans are delicious. And so that's the one I'm going to choose. And I'd love to hear from other folks. What is your favorite farm fresh produce before we get into our episode about river-friendly farms? So let that come on in so we can make sure that we know that you can use the chat. I love lettuce, sweet corn, okra. Yes, delicious. Is that fried okra? Fresh okra.
I love the diversity in everyone's favorites. Like we so many different ones. I also am a lover of tomatoes, so it's been super fun. I have a CSA that I do and have been loving getting those tomatoes in.
Yes, they're a whole different situation when they're fresh like that.
Oh yes, as I'm sure our farmers will attest to us that the taste is different.
Yes.
Blueberries, broccolini. Oh, Carissa.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And just a reminder, a few folks put that to hosts and panelists. And while we love a little side conversation, just make sure you put that to everyone so everyone can see it. And so we can make sure that we're all kind of chatting with each other. Salad mixes, beets, tomatoes, jalapenos. Yes, Jordan, I'm going to say that one as well. Turnips. I love it. This is fantastic. Well, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. Keep those coming in. We always love to see your answers. And now we know everyone knows how to use the chat. And so we will make sure that this episode is recorded and put up on YouTube and sent out afterwards, as with all the resources that we might bring up during the episode. So sit back, relax, and let's hear some sustainable happenings from Allie before we dive in.
Amazing. Thank you, Christina. And speaking of tomatoes, Tomato Art Fest is coming up. It's its 20th anniversary this coming weekend. And if you have not been to Tomato Art Fest, it is a lovely event that takes place in the 5 Points area of East Nashville. A lot of great tomato-centered events, activities, people coming together in the community. I love the little tagline that Tomato Art Fest has, "Unite or not a divider, bringing together fruits and vegetables." I think that's just a lovely thing. And my organization, Zero Waste Nashville, we will have a booth where you can make recycled paper tomatoes. So that will be a very exciting activity, and come look for us at Tomato Art Fest. Another sustainable happening, you hopefully voted in the most recent election that we promoted last episode, and now we're back for another election. There are a few runoff elections that are happening as a result of the election that just took place. So want to make sure that even though we voted that first time, got to go out there and do it all over again. So it's really important to stay aware of these dates coming up. Early voting starts on August 25th. And runs through September 9th. Use that, sustainable mentality to think about the candidates that are running in these elections, what their priorities are. The September 14th election includes the runoff election for Nashville's mayoral seat, as well as a few, 4 actually, of the remaining council at large seats. Several council districts, including Council District 4, 11, and 29 are in a runoff, and the Tennessee District 51 general election will also be on September 14th. I had this announcement in our last Sustainable Happenings. It's here again. The food scraps pickup pilot through Metro Nashville Waste Services is starting, or the application period for that pilot program is starting later this month. We will have any and all updates for you through the Sustainable in the City e-blast. So stay tuned for more updates. We're very excited to be bringing curbside food scrap collection to 750 lucky households, and that will be through an application process. And so look out for that application coming soon. And then finally, I'll turn it over to Christina before we get things going with our lovely guests.
It's wonderful. Thank you, Allie. We have never really talked about this on Sustainable in the City, but we feel like this is a great place in case there's any formal or informal educators on the call. We do have our Sustainable Classrooms virtual hub training. So from 1 to 4 p.m. on September 14th on Zoom, you will hear from myself, our classrooms coordinator, Erin Bloom, and lots of other great educators who are looking to bring a sustainability lens into any K through 12 classroom. So if you are formal, informal, homeschool, private, public, come on down to Zoom and learn about how to bring a sustainable lens into your classroom. And that is in the chat for the registration. So thank you all so much.
Thanks, Christina. And with that, I am going to introduce or have our guests introduce themselves. So we'll start off with Caroline Hutchins, if you'd be willing to introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. I am Caroline Hutchins, and I am the Working Lands Program Manager with the Cumberland River Compact.
Thank you. And then to Alex.
Hey, I'm Alex Bice. I own and operate Cooper Creek Farm in Inglewood, East Nashville. Yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Alex. And then finally over to Reggie.
Hello, I'm Reggie Marshall. I am the owner of Reggie's Veggies in Antioch, Tennessee.
Amazing. And Reggie, we'll stay with you for just a moment. If you'd be willing to tell us about your what your sustainability journey has looked like, and tell us a little bit more about the origin story for Reggie's Veggies.
Sure. So mine started, well, I grew up on a farm in West Tennessee, but the journey here in Nashville to for Reggie's Veggies started in 2014. As a nurse, one of my nursing goals was to provide healthy, nutritious produce to my community. And in 2016, I was able to acquire some land, and then started on this around 2017 without, just using the resources that I had readily available, and built then to an urban farm. So, it's food is our medicine, and also the way the food is grown has medicinal properties as well. So I tried to embody both of those.
That's great. I'm writing down here, food is medicine. I really like that. And we'll get into this a little bit later, but also interested to hear about your interactions with the Antioch community. So, but moving over to another local farm in another part of Nashville, Alex, if you'd be willing to tell us about your sustainability journey and your farm in, I think you said Inglewood, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I started Cooper Creek Farm in 2022, spring of 2022 was the first year. So it's a very young project still, and I'm still learning a lot. But farming is something I've always been interested in. I've always, I was lucky when I was a kid to have a vegetable garden in the backyard and parents who were into that. And in high school, I started a little market garden at my grandpa's house, and sold some food to the catering company that my aunt was working for. So that's kind of was my experience previous to this. But I've been a musician for, since I graduated college, and I got really into gardening during the pandemic, and that kind of snowballed into where I'm at today with having my own backyard farm.
Oh, that's great. And I'm sure kind of different experiences between the two of you in having a backyard farm versus Reggie. It sounds like yours, it's an urban farm, but not located at where you live. Am I getting that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So yeah, I would be, Alex, if you could speak also a little bit to what your interaction is like having that farm located in your yard. I mean, that's like a hyper local type of growing food.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes I wish that I had a little more separation from it, because it's just always there. And I don't know, I kind of, yeah, anyway, it's awesome though. I love not having to commute anywhere, and really fortunate to have landlords and neighbors who are on board with it. And yeah, it's great to have my backyard be this kind of food production space and like community hub in a way. Like I have a lot of volunteer or work trade days where people come over and get to meet each other, and yeah, it's really been cool.
That's awesome. And of course, as we're talking about farming generally, we could talk about so many important topics within farming, and just there's so much to dig into there. But thinking about specifically for the purposes of this episode and thinking about farming as it relates to river friendly practices and generally just how farms and agriculture interacts with our waterways. What does it mean to the both of you to be river friendly farmers?
Well, to me, it means adopting practices or ensuring that the practices we use aren't harming the local waterways in any way, preventing erosion and runoff into the Cumberland River watershed. And there's a variety of things that we can do to that end. Yeah, what does it mean to you, Reggie?
Well, I built my farm just as an environmentally friendly farm to begin with. So I wanted to use the resources that I had, the wood mulch and the cardboard, and I had several goals with my farm. One was to reduce the financial burden of farming, which is all the inputs that is always a downturn for farmers economically. I also wanted to not have to use water to irrigate my farm. I wanted to reduce the need for fertilizer, eventually not using fertilizer, and be able to produce produce that is safe to eat. Because oftentimes when we're diagnosed with a terminal illness, we all of a sudden want to eat organically grown food. So the goal from the beginning was to have that as one of my farming goals. I'm not certified organic, but I'm using practices that African American farmers have used for centuries, and so that's some of the same things my father used. We didn't call it organic, but that's what it is. So when I heard about the river friendly farming certification, I already had those practices in place. So that it fit exactly what my goals were in establishing the farm and being an example of what I wanted, so that when I do expand, then I have proof that can work, and I've proven it.
That's great, and a great segue to have Caroline join us here and introduce herself. And Caroline, what has your sustainability journey looked like? And then I'd love to ask you some questions about why Cumberland River Compact has started this river friendly farm program.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us today. So I just want to say I'm so impressed with Alex and Reggie. They're so inspiring to me. And yeah, they're river friendly farmers. So yeah, my sustainability journey, I guess it started here in Nashville. I'm from this area. And my parents were decidedly not crunchy people, but we did compost and recycle. And my mom taught me a love of food. She would always take me down to the farmer's market. And that really accelerated when I was in college. I read The Omnivore's Dilemma, which I feel like is a little bit controversial and passé now, but it really was a catalyst for me to experience sustainability and the food system in a new way. After college, I moved out to California and started farming out there. And, ever since then, food is just the lens through which I see the world. I'm fascinated by it because it is connected to all parts of our lives. Food is connected to fuel consumption. It's connected to plastic use, to food waste. It has socioeconomic implications, even war, like the war between Russia and Ukraine, like there's a food component to that. So I find food to just be totally fascinating. And, another reason I'm drawn to it is because it's a space where we have some autonomy. Not everybody can afford to put solar panels on their roof or drive an electric car. We are all beholden to TVA and NES. But, to a certain extent, we have control over what we choose to eat. And so I love that autonomy component that comes with it. If you eat with local farmers, that really lowers your carbon footprint. And if you're shopping with, say, river friendly farmers, then that the food you're consuming supports farmers who are good stewards of our waterways. So it's kind of where I'm at with it. And I should say, I farmed for the last 10 years And I joined the Cumberland River Compact recently as the Working Lands Program Manager. And part of my role is to administer our River Friendly Farms program. So I love it because I still get to work with lots of farmers and talk shop, and it's a super fun job, and I love it.
That's great. And food as the ever-present connector is very real. And you know, we all have to eat, right? Like every day we eat food. And that in and of itself is a choice to, or we at that point have the choice to, or we can have the choice to, you know, decide what to eat, how to eat. And I'm so kind of stepping back to the River Friendly Farms program. Can you tell us about what that program is, what it means, and why Cumberland River Compact started the River Friendly Farms certification, and when it started?
Sure. So the Cumberland River Compact adopted the River Friendly Farms certification program. It's actually from another part of the country, the Northeast, and we brought it here to Tennessee. And, you know, sometimes people might miss the connection between agriculture and water. It's not apparent immediately why the Cumberland River Compact would be so interested in farming. But actually, almost 50% of our waterways in Tennessee are impaired because of agricultural practices. So farming plays a huge role in the health of our waterways. And that's why the Cumberland River Compact is so interested in it. And that's why we started this certification program. So it is the point of it is to recognize farmers who are being good stewards of our waterways, to, you know, help them in their marketing efforts, and really to help them get out to the public, and to also help eaters, which is all of us, consumers, understand the relationship between farming and water health. And then we want consumers and eaters to go shop with these river friendly farmers and support them, because they share their values. So it kind of has a two-pronged mission. We want to support farmers in their conservation journey, and then we also want consumers to recognize those farmers and shop with them.
That's great. And you mentioned a few examples of what it means to be certified, but could you provide a few more examples of maybe some aspects of the certification, like different, whether you organize it into different like categories of certification?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so there's several different components to it. We're looking at your nutrient management, your general farmstead management. If you have livestock, we're going to look at how you're managing those. And then we're looking at like your soil health practices. So, you know, there's a lot that goes into each of it, but to give you some examples, Alex and Reggie, for example, they are practicing no-till, which is something we should totally get into. And no-till agriculture reduces the soil that's getting churned up. And so it tends to stay put on farms. They're building topsoil. So we're looking for farmers who are trying to build and regenerate their topsoil instead of having that churned up and potentially running off into waterways. If you raise livestock, we are looking to make sure that those animals aren't getting into the creeks and the waterways, that you are working to exclude them, because animals get into waterways and they, you know, the banks of the creeks might erode, or they're pooping. Generally, animals in waterways isn't good for the water. So want to make sure that they're staying out of the creeks. You know, general farmstead management, we want to make sure you're keeping things tidy, because a tidy space usually equates to a healthy farm. We want you to see that you are encouraging pollinator habitat. You know, Reggie and Alex grow lots of flowering plants that provide habitat for our pollinators, because our ecosystem is connected, as I'm sure you and all of our listeners know. Yeah, so does that kind of give you, oh, and you know, we want to make sure that you're not using an abundance of chemicals. We want to make sure that you're looking at the whole farm ecosystem, that you're using cover crops, that you're applying mulches the way Alex and Reggie do. You know, just that you're really trying to build that soil and you're not using chemical inputs to as a crutch, because those tend to run off into waterways.
Yeah, that's great, and gives a better understanding of what all it means to be certified with Cumberland River Compact. And yeah, I'm sure there are just so very many ways that farms can do better, or can can show what they're already doing to be better stewards of the local waterways. And Reggie, you had mentioned that some of the things that that Cumberland River Compact was looking for in that certification, you already were practicing. Is What are some examples of just some things that you maybe either of you, either Reggie or Alex, had to pick up and kind of learn as part of the certification program and do differently on your farms when you were doing the river friendly certification? Or was there anything that you were surprised that maybe Cumberland River Compact was looking for in getting certified?
No, I wasn't. And like I said, everything that Caroline's talking about, I implemented from the beginning. So I took some soil, I took a piece of land that was rock, nothing but rock, and I built the soil on top of it. So I've got areas there that are now over 2 feet deep. I've hauled in over between 700 and 800 tons of wood mulch and 700 to 800 pickup truckloads of cardboard that I've scavenged from various stores, mainly Dollar General during the pandemic. But I've been working on this for 6 years. So I think it was last year when I heard them talk about the river friendly farms, or earlier this year. I don't have runoff. So I don't till the soil, but I have what I call an underground cover crop. I let all the Bermuda grass grow throughout the garden. So when we have heavy rains, I don't have any runoff. And, I haven't watered my garden since September of last year. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I have to say, I visited Reggie's farm earlier this year, a month ago or something, and he had summer squash plants, zucchini plants that were almost as tall as me. They were like 5 feet tall. It was just luscious and abundant, and Alex's as well. I haven't seen Alex's since the early spring, but yeah, when I visited Reggie's recently, I was just blown away by the health and vigor.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I think for my farm, it was pretty smooth sailing getting certified. I didn't really have to change anything that I was doing because it was already in compliance. It was kind of, when I heard about the River Friendly Farms program, I was like, oh, a certification that I could get easily. Yeah, so I mean, the way that I and Reggie farm is just kind of by its nature, like not going to lead to erosion or runoff, or the types of things that would harm waterways to begin with. So it was pretty painless to get the certification. They kind of just came out and were like, oh, yep, it looks good.
That's great. And hopefully if we have any farmers or prospective farmers on the call, they can know that it's maybe not as intimidating of a process as it could seem.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to have some farmers on here who did start from a worse position in terms of river waterway pollution or whatever, and turn their practices around. But I think for Reggie and I, it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, and that makes me think, Caroline, you do not have to name any farms by any means, but have you experienced that working with other farms in the area, that you've kind of had to coach them along into being in this better place with their river friendly practices?
Thus far, luckily, every farm who has applied has kind of been a shoo-in, like they're already following organic practices, and it hasn't been too big of a thing. The only kind of thing that tends to trip up farms is livestock getting into creeks. And usually that's cattle, because cattle are just like magnets to water, and it it makes it so much easier for the farmer to just give access to the creek. So that's kind of a conversation we have to have sometimes. And, usually what I explain to the farmer is, you don't really know what's upstream. you don't know what somebody is dumping into the creek upstream. You don't know what kind of pathogens there are. So almost for the health of your animals, as much as for the health of the waterway, we encourage you to put up that exclusionary fencing to keep your livestock out of waterways. And part of this program is that we can help farmers put those conservation goals into practice. So, we don't just tell you to do something and then leave. It's a partnership. We are going to set you up with some funding to get the fencing. We're going to work with you to find an alternative watering source. A lot of that is through NRCS, National Resource Conservation Service, or the Department of Agriculture has a grant program as well. So yeah, we really want to partner with farmers. And if any farmers listen to this who feel like they're maybe on the cusp of their conservation goals and they want some help and they want to get there, we want to help you get there. So I'll put that out there. Luckily, nobody who we've had to turn away yet. But yeah, the livestock is always a work in progress.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I don't know that I would have expected that would be the most difficult thing for farmers, but I guess it makes sense, right? There's a lot of impact on having livestock, but it's it's complicated. We all have, whether we know it or not, we have an impact on what's getting in the water, us and livestock and everything else. Are there other things that you think people would be surprised to learn about the impact that we have, or that you mentioned like livestock has, just other surprising facts that people may not know about how we impact, like the Cumberland River, for example, as engaging in agriculture?
I can kind of think that, a connection that people might not immediately make with farming and with waterways is, farmers are so dependent on water. Farmers need water to do what they do to feed us. Middle Tennessee, we're really reliant on what's called surface water. So surface water is, our creeks and our lakes. It's basically like not a well or a pond, right? If it's not coming underground, it's on the surface. And that's where we get all of our drinking water. And that's where most of our farmers are getting their water to, water their plants if they need to. Reggie has miraculously figured out how to not irrigate, but most farmers I know are needing to irrigate. And so they need healthy, clean water. If you're growing like a salad crop, you have to be careful with your water. You don't want E. coli pathogens in that water. So yeah, if you're taking care of your animals, you need healthy, clean water. So it's definitely like this relationship where farmers need to take care of waterways because the water takes care of them. And something I always like to mention is kind of this macro level look at our food system. Most of our food in America, if you go to a grocery store, is actually grown in a desert, which is kind of crazy. Like most of our salad is grown in Arizona. Almonds, which one almond takes a gallon of water, famously. Most of our almonds are grown in California, where they don't have ready access to water. And all of this water for the agricultural hub of America is pulled out of the Colorado River, which is terribly depleted. Like 80% of water that's pulled out of the Colorado goes to agriculture. And, to bring that back home, if you're shopping with a local farmer like Reggie or Alex, then you are supporting a system that is good for our waterways, countrywide, and not participating in a system that hurts our waterways. So Reggie and Alex, I don't know if there's anything that you guys have kind of thought about. I mean, Alex, I know you have Cooper Creek running through your backyard, so I wonder how that's affected your perception of farming and water.
Yeah, I mean, Cooper Creek flows about 200 feet away from my lower field block. And so, it's kind of the backdrop to my whole operation, and always, in my mind in terms of that, I'm just using city water to irrigate right now, but there is like the potential to use Cooper Creek, or there's a well on the site that I could irrigate with. And so, it's, yeah, I definitely have a connection to the creek, and I feel just sort of a personal connection to it because it's the namesake of the farm, and yeah, it's the waterway. It's important. Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine it would be hard to ignore if it's running. What did you say, 200 feet
Yeah,
behind?
it's about 200 feet away from my field there, and
Yeah.
hasn't flooded yet, but I imagine, it could become a pretty big presence on the farm at some times.
They'll bring the river friendly to mean something very different. River
Yeah, we might
adjacent.
shake hands one day.
Could start feeding fish if that happens.
That's funny. And so circling back to, I think, I don't remember which one of you mentioned it earlier, but the practice of no-till farming, and that's one of many examples of a river-friendly practice that you both take part in. Could you just provide us again an understanding of, as non-farmers in the room, of what that means and how it differs from what I guess you would call tilling or till practices, and what the benefit is of that for our rivers?
Well, in order to till ground, you've got to open the ground up and turn the ground up, basically turn it upside down. So, and that has to be done on a lot of, especially new farms. If you're going to start a new farm, luckily for me, I didn't have the luxury with the rock. So I had to build on top of the rock. But anytime ground is moved, it's just like when you pour water, when you're mixing a cake. Just think of it when you're mixing a cake. You have flour in there, you pour oil or milk on the flour, then you see the flour move. That's what the soil does. So anytime water hits dirt that's exposed, if it's not being held in place by soil or mulch, then there's a chance of that soil running off, especially during heavy rains. So that's what you get when you have fields that are tilled. And keep in mind, now some of the fields that are tilled, they're going to have riparian buffers where you'll have weeds or grass being grown to keep that soil from running off the field. So there are some buffers on some of the larger farms that do help with that. But for me on a small farm, my goal again was not to have to use water. In 2014, when I started my goal of wanting to provide food for the community, they were talking about scarcity of water in California. And I said, if water in California is scarce now, at some point, we may have to worry about that. So I wanted to find a solution early, ahead of the game, so that as I expand, which Alex and I both are going to be expanding another farm here soon, I wanted to have some proof that it could work, not just for myself, but for the rest of the community, because now I have people in my community stopping by and telling me that they're doing the same thing in their backyard.
Yeah. For no-till, I think also, so much of a soil's permeability and ability to absorb rainfall has to do with the soil life kind of creating this porosity, this crumb structure within the soil. And when you till the soil, you're kind of breaking up all those, like all the earthworm tunnels and all the fungal mycelial networks and everything. And so no-till agriculture just kind of leaves all of that to do its thing. And you really see a big difference in terms of when it rains, the water just sinking in versus running off. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure out there somewhere there's a side-by-side either photo or video of like till and no till,
Mhm.
where it would be fairly obvious. That's interesting. You both do a very good job at explaining that to our non-farmers in the room, myself being one of them. The visual of the wormholes and all of that, and the cake. I've made a cake. I can relate to that, you know. I may not have grown had a farm in my backyard, but yeah, it's very helpful to in general when we talk about, or when we are all experts in our own little fields, and how we relate that knowledge to other people is very important. So I really appreciate y'all explaining that. And kind of transitioning a little bit back to the intersection between both of your farms in the communities that they're located in. And Caroline, also this may be something that's River Friendly Farms certification takes into account. So would love to hear that as well. But for Alex and Reggie, could both of you speak to the kind of the interaction and the intersection between what it means to you as urban farmers and connecting with your community in that, whether it be like through empowerment, through growing food, or having that education for your local community, Antioch and Inglewood and East Nashville, about your work?
Yeah, so it was important for me to, like I said, be an example, right? Coming from healthcare, you know, I've been able to improve my health with losing some weight and changing my diet. But also when it comes to farming, oftentimes when we think about farming, we're thinking of large scale operations outside of the city. But the goal was to show somebody and show my community that no matter where you are, you can build a food system. It doesn't have to be an acre, doesn't have to be a quarter of an acre. It can be a raised bed, and you can build it by using the readily available resources that you have. You know, free things. You know, we compost waste, so you can build a food system with compost. You know, things that we're throwing away. Cardboard is being thrown away. The wooden mulch is coming to the facility because trees are down, or they're cleaning up roadsides. And I'm taking that product, and also now I'm incorporating products from Good Citizens Coffee Company, coffee chaff and coffee grounds and burlap, and also from Bongo Java, you know, using those products to build soil structure and feed the worms and feed the microbes in there. So, you know, I'm taking waste products. I'm not buying things. You know, it's a little bit of gas and a lot of work, but you know, the goal was to build something so that at some point I'm just maintaining it. And right now I'm maintaining the soil. And so, as I said before, I have had a lot of people in Antioch, because it's sitting right across the street from Antioch High School. So, you know, you've got about 3,000 students at school, and the parents have seen me, and a lot of kids have walked by and talked to me, you know, and like I said, I've had a number of people stop by and tell me that, you know, they're proud of what I'm doing in the community, and they're very thankful. And, you know, it's, someone asked me one day, do I worry about people getting into my garden? And I said, no, it's because if something is out of place, I get a phone call from somebody in the community. So it was built for the community, so they kind of feel like it's, you know, even though it's my place, they feel like that, you know, they have ownership in that as well.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned coffee stuff, because that reminded me that I need to go pick up the coffee grounds from Sip Cafe today. I also use a lot of coffee byproducts from a local source for my soil fertility. And yeah, I think another way that, like you said, just providing an example for people in the community to see what's possible in a small space in a backyard. I also think that home gardening is a really important kind of spoke on the wheel of you know, a resilient food system. And I try to be a resource for home gardeners in the neighborhood. I encourage people to come over here and participate in my work trade days and kind of, you know, pick my brain about gardening, or just see how we do things here. And I also sell a lot of plant starts, and the way that I grow them, they're grown outdoors in the sunshine, you know, exposed to the elements, and so they're and there are varieties that I've picked that I know are going to do well here. So that's a cool resource for the neighborhood too. Like you can get plants that are going to do a lot better than anything you could get at Home Depot or whatever. Yeah, and so just being there to show what's possible and encourage people to grow food themselves. I think that's a big one. Yeah.
Alex, do you still do your the cooler, the pay what you can cooler?
I do. Yeah. I typically do those on Wednesdays. It's usually after the East Nashville Farmers Market that I'll have some leftovers. This time, another farm, friends of mine, Maypop Farmstead, they came and purchased everything for a community meal that they're doing. So I don't have that this week, but usually that's out there, and I'll make a post about it on Instagram.
That's great, and really cool to see the impact that both of you have in being this like positive ripple effect through the community and bringing those economic benefits and those social and environmental benefits to your communities. And especially Reggie, that's so interesting that you're located across from a high school. You hope that there's some sort of like passive education happening there of having high schoolers like leave the campus and see, oh, there's someone growing food over here. Like, what's that about? And final question in this kind of grouping of questions. What does it mean to you both, or how does your work intersect with justice and equity when it comes to, again, like the interaction that you have in your community, being in an urban farm or being at an urban farm?
A lot. So, we all know the history of Black farmers in America. And for me to be out there as an example of how someone can be involved and show them opportunities that are available in agriculture for African Americans and other brown people is very important. When I had a project a couple of years ago where I gave out over 1,000 pots in the J.C. Napier and Seducum community, right? And people were coming out saying, I've never seen a Black farmer before, which is very important to me because I grew up in a farming community. My father was a Black farmer. And for these young folks, some 2-3 generations removed from the farm, who have never seen a Black farmer. And we do exist. So it's important for me to make sure that they see my face out there. Because oftentimes, farming to a lot of young African Americans is slavery or sharecropping. That relationship was never good. So they need to be able to see that, growing your own food is extremely important. And because someone didn't treat you or your family right on the land that you were on, or maybe took the land that you had, you need to reclaim your history because, we were brought to this country as slaves because we were good farmers. So anytime somebody novelizes or minimizes the effort of African American farmers, you don't have to defend it. You just realize inside yourself is a DNA that can produce anything you want to produce, because that's why you were brought here.
Yeah, that's really cool with it. I was reading some statistics about, Black farmers in America. It's declined by like 90% since in the last 100 years, and that, like, and 100 years ago, that was like the height of Jim Crow, so it wasn't even what it could have been at all then. And now it's down to like 1% of farmers who identify as Black in America. And we need to do things to correct that. And I think to kind of address the culture within the ag community too, because it's just been so dominated by white dudes for so long. And I'm one of them, but we got it. yeah, I think we need to make sure that well, at least on my farm, I try to make sure that people know that it's a inclusive, safe space for people of any race, any gender, any sexual orientation to come and learn with me and just hang out. And I've seen that in my volunteer days, my work trade days have been a very diverse crowd. So that's cool to see.
That's fantastic. And you can also think about there's the justice components, the equity components of the farmers themselves, of the farms. And then as we're talking about waterways, going all the way downstream to think about the impacts that are going to happen with the worst effects of climate change, thinking about the worsening impacts of stormwater runoff and just other things that will impact our BIPOC communities the hardest. So it's where it's like all full circle with all of this. And just to make sure that we have enough time for our Q&A from the audience, if we've had some audience questions, I want to make sure we also promote where people can find you, where people can engage with you, whether it's farmers markets or where you are in your local communities.
Yeah, so I'm at the Nashville Farmers Market Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I'm also putting in a pick your own greens area out there at the Bend farm where Alex and I are expanding to this fall. And on the 21st of September, I'm having Reggie's Urban Ag Day at Tennessee State University, where I'm having all the USDA agencies, someone from the Tennessee Department of Agriculture, TSU. I've got it's going to be an all-day event from 9 to 4 on TSU farm downtown, on TSU's campus rather. And we'll also have Daryl Levin from Memphis. He's an aquaponics farmer in the city of Memphis. He'll have his setup there along with a hydroponic setup. We'll have another grow tower, which I have a grow tower set up at the farmer's market. If somebody wants to come by and see it, I'm actually growing and selling out of one of those grow towers hydroponically. So that's where I am. And also, like I said, I'd like for as many people to come to that event because we want to make sure that people in the city understand the opportunities they have in agriculture, and also give the students at TSU an opportunity to see opportunities they have so that when they leave college and have expendable cash, they can look at ventures or land ownership in agriculture as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you can find me at the East Nashville Farmers Market on Tuesdays from 3:30 to 6:30, and at the Amqui Station Farmers Market in Madison every Sunday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And you can also come out to the farm. I'm in Inglewood, 1208 McAlpine Avenue. And every Wednesday I do like what I call work trade Wednesdays, where I kind of open up the farm to anybody who wants to come out and put in a little bit of time helping out in exchange for produce or plants. And it's kind of just a fun community day where you probably meet some other folks who are interested in growing food. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Thank you. And Caroline, where can we keep up to date with the River Friendly Farms certification program?
Yeah. Well, first of all, look for River Friendly Farmers at your farmers markets. If you're going to purchase a CSA, look out for River Friendly Farmers. You can learn more at our website, cumberlandrivercompact.org. There is a tab page dedicated to River Friendly Farms. Follow us on Instagram too. We're posting a lot about our River Friendly Farmers.
Great. All right. Carissa and Christina, are y'all ready to turn it over for our audience questions?
Yeah. So this has been great to hear as someone who, my first job was in a cornfield. They kind of just dropped us off and we detasseled, and just knowing, firsthand how hard the work can be, but how rewarding it can be. There's so much power in growing and harvesting your own food. So this has been really special to hear, especially move into Nashville as a young girl and trying to adjust to the mass produced food that is so easy to get, but so bad for your body. I remember just calling my grandma and just being like, why does the food taste so different here? Why is it so disgusting? Honestly, I was just like, why is it so disgusting? She's like, oh, that's just the love that you taste in it. When you grow it yourself, that's the love that you're eating, that you're tasting. It's the hard work that you're tasting. So yeah, this really hit home for me. So we do have a few questions. Some people were asking about the no-till. So do farmers have to use more chemicals in no-till in order to control the weeds? So any of you can speak to that a little bit?
So on large farms, no-till is going to be a lot of it's going to be controlled with, it can be some of it can control with cover crops, some of it's going to be controlled with chemicals. The state of Indiana leads the nation in regenerative agriculture at this point. So there are some methods that they're using, and I think more farmers are going to be moving toward things like that because the expense of farming is getting out of hand. The chemicals cost more, the fertilizer costs more, and then, with us getting most of our nitrogen from other countries, when those things, the fertilizer plants in Ukraine are shut down or China's not shipping anything out, it has a rippling effect on everybody. So we have to find other ways. So I think we're going to see more of that.
Yeah, I think on large farms, they do no-till tends to mean like cover cropping and then terminating that cover crop with Roundup and then planting your crop into that residue. So that's probably not ideal that they're using something like Roundup, but I still would rather see that than those farms, tilling every season, because the soil erosion and nutrient runoff that comes from tilling is a really big problem. That's why we have a huge dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. So anything that reduces tillage, I think is a good thing, but getting the chemicals out of the equation is the best. Ultimately we should find ways to do that too. And on our scale, we're using practices where we don't need to, we can put in the attention to do things like cardboard and deep compost mulching and things like that, so to where we don't feel the need to rely on chemicals. But when you're talking about broad acre crops, like I see why they rely on Roundup for that still.
Yeah, and I'll just add that a lot of times farmers that you'll see at the farmers market, like Reggie and Alex, they'll say they're no-till, organic no-till. You'll also hear it called. And farmers like that, they're removing plants through, either they're just using their hands or they're cutting the plant off at the base so that it'll die, it'll leave the roots in the soil. On a little bit of a larger scale, people will use these really thick, heavy silage tarps, and that can terminate a crop without chemicals. But then, yeah, as Alex and Reggie said, when you get up into farms that are, hundreds of acres, these are the row crop farms that are growing a lot of like corn, wheat, and soy. They are using glyphosate to terminate cover crops and other crops. It's how they control weeds. But it does reduce tillage.
Awesome. So this next question is for Caroline. Denise was asking, I'm curious why CRC decided to create a new certification rather than promote an existing certification. What might be missing in organic, regenerative, organic, or certified naturally grown?
Yeah, and those are amazing programs, and we support them. We wanted to adopt the River Friendly Farms program for a couple reasons. One is that, certified naturally grown is actually kind of this way, but this program it's owned by the community. I know Reggie and Alex. I helped do their certification. The county NRCS officer came out to meet with them. You know, we're here together. It feels very communal. And I think when something is by and for the community, it's going to serve the community's needs better and our farmers better. So that's one aspect of it. Another thing is that we just really wanted to call attention to the connection between farming and water health, and those other programs that were mentioned, they absolutely take water health into account. But this program specifically is designed to recognize these farmers and what they do to be great stewards of our shared water resources.
And then our last question, are there any relations between the River Friendly Farms program and other organizations? And then what about UT Extension?
So we have a great partnership with NRCS, the National Resource Conservation Service. Their officers a lot of times will come out to the farms to do the certifications with us. And so that's a federal program, but it has, you know, like local chapters. And then, you know, UT Extension, we also have a relationship with them. They're wonderful. They don't necessarily help us out with the River Friendly Farms program. Right now, we'd love to, one of our goals is to incorporate more of the state programs into what we're doing.
So it looks like some people have put some questions in the chat. I've heard that white vinegar is a good way to eliminate weeds. Would you recommend this?
I've never used it.
Oh, go ahead, Reggie.
I've never used it, so I can't, I won't speak on it.
There's, you can get like an agricultural grade vinegar home, like the kind of white vinegar you could get at Kroger isn't gonna do it. But at like the Davidson Farmers Co-op, you can get this like 30% extra concentrated vinegar that is actually effective on certain weeds. Yeah, and that's, you know, I've never used it myself, but I think that's better than using chemicals.
I've heard of vinegar being used. I would wonder what it would do to the soil pH. Like, I don't imagine you could use it in your growing space. Maybe if you're trying to control like invasive grasses around the edges, but yeah.
And then someone was just curious to find details about Reggie's events, upcoming events, and we will definitely get with Reggie and have those in the follow-up email after our show today. But that is all. Allie, you want to take it back over?
Yeah, just really appreciate the three of you so much for joining us for this lunch hour and sharing with us your valuable experience farming, nerding out with us a little bit and helping us understand about the work that you all do. It's so very important, and really appreciate that you're here in the Nashville community. And it's just, yeah, it's nice to know that you're here in the area with us. And thanks to all of you who tuned in for this Sustainable in the City episode. We will be back with you next month, and look forward to speaking to you then. All right, take care, everyone.
Thank you.
So much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.